"Save my brother," the 4-year-old homeless girl pleaded at the hospital, but the doctor refused, all while a millionaire watched, leading to an incredible act. Comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The smell of disinfectant mixed with sweat and despair permeated every corner of the county hospital on the edge of town. The peeling walls bore daily witness to the suffering of those with nowhere else to turn. And on that Tuesday morning, another tragedy was unfolding in the crowded hallway. The 4-year-old homeless girl, looking more like a 2-year-old due to severe malnutrition, held the unconscious body of her brother in her thin arms. Her bare feet left dirty marks on the cold hospital floor as she ran desperately from side to side, looking for someone to help. "Please, doctor, he won't wake up," she cried in a hoarse voice, her big, scared eyes fixed on the boy's pale face. "He was playing with me yesterday, and this morning he can't open his eyes." The on-call doctor, a middle-aged man with deep circles under his eyes that betrayed endless shifts, barely looked up from the clipboard he was holding. The emergency room was packed. Screams echoed from all sides, and he had already seen dozens of cases since arriving in the early morning. "Girl, do you have the child's records, Medicaid card, a responsible adult?" he asked impatiently, showing no interest in examining the unconscious boy. "I don't have anything, doctor, but he needs help. Look at him," she pleaded, trying to approach the desk where the doctor was working. "He hasn't eaten anything for 2 days, just had some dirty water I found." The doctor finally looked at the 2 children, and his face hardened even more. He saw only 2 more minors in a bad situation, a social problem that didn't fit on his already overburdened desk. "Without records and without a responsible adult, I can't do anything. You need to go to Child Protective Services first. Sort out the legal situation of the children, then come back with the papers," he replied coldly, already turning his attention to other patients. "But he'll die if you don't take care of him now." "Please," the girl shouted, tears streaming down her dirty face. "I'll do anything, I'll clean the whole hospital, but save my brother." "Kid, I can't break protocol. Without proper documentation, without guaranteed payment, there's no treatment." "That's how it works," said the doctor, signaling for security to approach. It was at that moment that a deep, firm voice cut through the tense atmosphere of the emergency room. "I'll pay for the child's full treatment." All heads turned towards the voice. A man of approximately 30 years old, wearing an impeccable dark suit, walked towards the group. His Italian leather shoes made a distinct sound against the hospital floor, contrasting with the rundown environment around him. The businessman had arrived at the hospital only an hour before to visit 3 employees from his construction company who had been injured in a work accident. His stock market investments had yielded so much in recent years that he made a point of personally covering the medical costs of his employees, demonstrating the care he had for those who worked for him. As he passed through the emergency room hallway, he heard the girl's desperate cries and stopped to observe the scene. Something in that situation touched a sensitive chord in his chest, an old pain that he kept carefully buried under layers of financial success and business responsibilities. "Sir, are you serious?" asked the doctor, clearly surprised by the unexpected intervention. "Completely. I want this child to receive the best possible care, all the necessary tests, hospitalization if necessary," replied the millionaire, taking out his credit card from his jacket pocket. "And the girl needs to be examined too." The homeless girl looked at the well-dressed man with a mixture of distrust and despair. All her life experience on the streets told her not to trust strangers, especially those who seemed to have money. But her brother was dying in her arms, and she had no choice. "Why do you want to help us?" she asked in a trembling voice, squeezing her brother against her chest. The businessman crouched down to be at the girl's level, his blue eyes meeting hers for the first time. For a moment, he saw in her eyes the same despair that he himself had felt many years ago, a pain he recognized intimately. "Because every child deserves a chance to live," he replied simply, extending his hand. "Can I hold him for you while the doctor examines him?" The girl hesitated for a few seconds that seemed eternal, studying the man's face for signs of ill intent. When she found nothing but sincerity, she slowly handed the unconscious brother into the stranger's arms. The doctor, now motivated by the prospect of guaranteed payment, immediately called for a stretcher and began emergency procedures. Nurses rushed to help, and in a few minutes the boy was being taken to an examination room. "What's his name?" asked the businessman to the girl as they accompanied the stretcher down the hallway. "I can't tell strangers his name," she replied, still distrustful, "but you can call him Little One. That's what I call him." For the next 3 hours the businessman remained at the hospital, paying for test after test, consulting specialists, ensuring that no procedure was spared. His fortune, built through years of hard work and smart investments, had never been used for something that brought him so much satisfaction. When the doctor finally came out of the examination room with a diagnosis, the businessman felt his stomach clench with the worry that grew with each minute. The diagnosis fell like a bomb on the small group gathered in the hallway. The doctor, now with a completely different posture due to the guaranteed payment, explained the situation with details that chilled the businessman's blood. "The child has severe pneumonia, extreme dehydration, and signs of chronic malnutrition. We need immediate hospitalization, cutting-edge antibiotics, and intensive nutritional monitoring," said the doctor, consulting the tests. "But there's something more worrying. The blood tests show changes that suggest a rare condition. We need more tests to confirm." The homeless girl did not fully understand the technical words, but she saw the concern on the adults' faces. She held onto the businessman's shirt with her small, dirty hands. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked with a broken voice. "We'll do everything we can," replied the businessman, gently placing his hand on the girl's head. "He'll be hospitalized here, and you'll be able to visit him every day. I'm not leaving him. Where he stays, I stay too," she declared with a determination that impressed the man. It was then that the businessman realized the reality of those children. They had nowhere to go. They had no one but each other. The girl had taken care of her brother alone, probably for months, doing whatever it took to keep him alive. "Where do you live?" he asked gently. The girl looked around, as if checking if anyone else was listening, then whispered, "In a place we found. It has a roof and walls, so the rain doesn't get us too wet." In the following weeks, the businessman discovered that the place was an abandoned shack on the outskirts of the city, built with old wood and plastic tarps. The children slept on soaked mattresses that they had found in the trash, covered themselves with old newspapers, and survived by eating leftovers that the girl managed to find in the markets and diners in the area. Every day, the businessman arrived at the hospital before work to visit the boy, who remained hospitalized in the pediatric ICU. He brought storybooks for the girl, who had absolutely refused to leave the hospital, sleeping in a chair next to her brother's bed. "Why do you come here every day?" she asked after a week, her initial distrust beginning to dissolve. "Because I care about you," he replied sincerely, "and because I know what it's like to have no one when you need help." It was during these daily conversations that the businessman began to understand the children's story. They had been abandoned by distant relatives after their parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. The girl, then only 2 years old, had learned to take care of her brother by pure survival instinct. "I get food for him first, always," she said one day as they watched the boy sleep connected to medical equipment. "If there's only one piece of bread, he eats it. If there's only one sip of clean water, he drinks it. I take care of him because he's smaller than me." The businessman felt a growing pain in his chest with each revelation. His financial investments and his property holdings had never seemed so insignificant in the face of the courage of that 4-year-old girl who had sacrificed everything for her brother. After 3 weeks of hospitalization, the doctors confirmed what they feared. The boy had a rare condition in the blood that required extremely expensive experimental treatment. The cost would be astronomical, even for someone with the businessman's fortune. "How much exactly?" he asked the specialist doctor, who'd been called in from another state. "Approximately the equivalent of $5 million, sir. It's a treatment that doesn't exist in the public system. It needs to be done in specialized private clinics, with imported medications that cost a fortune," explained the specialist. The businessman swallowed hard. That represented practically all his net worth, all his stock investments, all the assets he had accumulated in years of hard work. But when he looked at the girl who was squeezing her unconscious brother's little hand, his decision was made. "Do the treatment. I authorize everything." That same night, alone in his office, he began making calls to his stockbrokers. He sold shares that he had been accumulating for years, liquidated investments that were the basis of his financial security, mortgaged properties that he had bought as a store of value. The girl didn't know any of this. For her, that well-dressed man was simply someone who had appeared at the right moment, like a guardian angel she didn't know she needed. She began to trust him gradually, telling stories about her life on the streets, about how she learned to recognize which leftovers were still good, about how she protected her brother from the other street kids who sometimes tried to steal their few possessions. A month after the start of treatment, a middle-aged woman in professional clothes with a clipboard in her hand appeared at the hospital. She was the social worker responsible for the case, a professional embittered by years of dealing with family tragedies. "Sir, I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with these children," she said in a dry, suspicious tone. "It's very unusual for a stranger to spend so much money on unknown minors without having ulterior motives." The businessman felt a mixture of anger and embarrassment. "My intentions are just to help 2 children in need." "That's what everyone says," replied the social worker. "I'll need to investigate your background, talk to the children separately, check if there's any kind of abuse or exploitation involved." The social investigation lasted for humiliating weeks. The businessman had to open his private life, explain his financial situation, submit to psychological questionnaires, all while continuing to pay for the boy's expensive treatment. It was during this tense period that something unexpected happened. The boy, even weakened by the disease, began to draw. A nurse had given him paper and colored pencils to entertain him, and he created drawings that left everyone speechless. Detailed landscapes, impressive portraits, compositions that seemed to have been made by an experienced adult artist. "He always drew," the girl said proudly, "even in the sand, even in the dust. He makes beautiful drawings of places we've never seen." The boy's exceptional talent brought new hope to the businessman. Maybe that child could have a bright future ahead of him. Maybe all the financial sacrifice was worth it if it resulted in saving a life that could contribute in a special way to the world. But 3 months after the start of treatment, when the businessman thought the worst was over, the girl started coughing. First were dry and occasional coughs, which she tried to hide so as not to worry anyone. Then the cough became constant, accompanied by fever and weakness. "She has pneumonia too," diagnosed the doctor after examining her. The stress, the poor nutrition for years, the inadequate sleep in the hospital chair. Her immune system was completely compromised. In a few hours, the girl who had heroically cared for her brother became a patient in the same hospital, hospitalized just a few feet from him. The businessman saw his only improvised family fall apart before his eyes, and for the first time since meeting the children, he felt real panic. With both children hospitalized in separate ICU rooms, the businessman found himself dividing his time between 2 hospital beds, carrying the emotional weight of 2 lives that depended on him. The girl, even feverish and weak, constantly asked about her brother, and he lied, saying that the boy was improving so as not to increase her anguish. The treatment of the girl's pneumonia required expensive antibiotics and intensive care, adding to the already astronomical costs of her brother's experimental treatment. The businessman calculated that his financial resources would be completely depleted in less than 2 months if the situation continued like this. During one of his nightly visits to the hospital, as he ran between the 2 rooms like a desperate father, he found Dr. Silva, a pediatric oncologist who was following the boy's case. "I need to talk to you about a delicate situation," said the doctor, leading him to a private room. "The treatment is working, but there are complications. The boy's condition is rarer than we initially imagined. There is a experimental surgery, performed in only 3 hospitals in the world, that could permanently cure the child." The businessman felt his heart race. "What's the cost?" "Approximately $15 million, including travel, extended stay abroad, and post-operative costs," the doctor replied with regret. "I know you've already invested a lot, but without this surgery, the boy will have to undergo treatments for the rest of his life, with a limited quality of life. 15 million. The businessman returned home that night, knowing that he would need to sell everything he owned, including the company he had built with so much effort. His family inheritance, his gold investments, his investment funds, everything would have to be liquidated. The next morning, while signing papers to mortgage his last property, he received a call that would change everything. "Sir, this is the bank manager. Your employees from the construction company are here, saying they have discovered irregularities in your business accounts. They are demanding explanations about the large withdrawals and asset sales of the last few months." The businessman arrived at the office and found his trusted team gathered in the meeting room, with worried expressions and documents spread across the table. "Boss, we need to talk," said Roberto, his right-hand man for 10 years. "The numbers don't add up. You've withdrawn millions from the company in recent months without explanation. Investors are suspicious. Some clients have cancelled contracts. If this continues, we'll have to fire you for financial mismanagement." "It's temporary," the businessman lied. "I made some personal investments that will pay off soon. It's a matter of weeks, and everything will return to normal." Roberto shook his head. "We can't sustain this situation for much longer. The company is losing credibility in the market. You have 2 weeks to rectify the situation, or we'll have to take drastic measures." When he returned to the hospital that afternoon, he found a scene that left him even more distressed. A well-dressed couple was talking to the social worker in the hallway while watching the boy through the glass of the room. "We only want to adopt the boy," said the elegant woman of approximately 40 years old. "We can offer the best education, opportunities he would never have, but we can't afford to take both. The girl will have to go to a different foster home." The social worker, who had completed her investigation without finding irregularities in the businessman's behavior, was considering the proposal seriously. "It's a unique opportunity for the boy," she said. "The family has excellent references, guaranteed financial stability. It would be selfish to deny him this chance." The businessman interrupted the conversation abruptly. "These children can't be separated. They only have each other." "Sir, be realistic," replied the social worker. "You can't take care of them forever. Eventually, you'll have to think about permanent solutions for their future." That night, when the girl was finally discharged from the ICU and could visit her brother, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. The businessman tried to hide his worry, but she had developed a sharp instinct for detecting problems. "They're going to separate us, aren't they?" she asked directly, her big eyes fixed on his face. The businessman couldn't lie. "There are people interested in adopting your brother, people who can give him things that I can't." "What kind of things?" "A big house, toys, private school, college in the future." The girl was silent for a long time, watching her brother sleep. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with a maturity that broke the businessman's heart. "I want him to have those things, but I want to be with him when he has them. We promised each other that we would never let anyone separate us." It was in that same week that the businessman's financial situation completely collapsed. His employees, discovering the real extent of his debts, voted for his removal from the company. Creditors began foreclosing on his properties. In a matter of days, he lost everything. The company, the house, the cars, even his designer clothes were repossessed to pay off debts. The man who had been a millionaire found himself living in a small rented apartment on the outskirts of town, wearing simple clothes bought in discount stores, working as a factory worker in an auto parts factory to pay the rent and continue to help with the hospital costs. "Why did you do it?" asked the girl when she found out that he had lost everything. "Why did you spend all your money on us?" The businessman squatted next to the bed where she was sitting, playing with one of the drawings that her brother had made. "Because you reminded me of something I had forgotten a long time ago," he said. "When I was little, I had a brother too. His name was Michael, and he was 2 years younger than me." The girl stopped playing and paid full attention. "We were poor, very poor. My parents worked all day to buy food, but it was never enough. One day, Michael got sick. He had a high fever, coughed a lot, couldn't breathe properly. Like my brother? Similar. But at that time, my parents didn't have money for a doctor. They took him to the clinic, but they said it was just a flu, that it would pass. Michael got worse every day, and I stayed by his bed holding his hand, promising that I would take care of him forever." The businessman's voice choked. "But I couldn't. One morning he didn't wake up anymore, and I spent the rest of my life feeling guilty for not being able to save him." The girl extended her small hand and touched the face of the man who had become her family. "That's why you want to save my brother so much." "Yes. I saw you at the hospital and I remembered me and Michael. I thought that maybe, if I could save your brother, I could forgive myself for not being able to save mine." That night, when he returned to his simple apartment, the ex-businessman looked around the small and modest space that he now called home. He had no more money, no more company, no more of the symbols of success that he had accumulated. But for the first time in decades, he felt a strange peace in his heart. 2 days later, he received a call that would change everything again. Dr. Silva had news about the experimental surgery, but it wasn't what he expected to hear. The call from Dr. Silva brought a twist that no one expected. The doctor explained that a unique opportunity had arisen. A university hospital in another state was selecting cases for a free experimental program funded by an international medical research foundation. "The boy fits perfectly into the profile they are looking for," said the doctor with enthusiasm. "If he is accepted, all surgery and treatment will be paid for by the research. It's a 1 in a million chance." The ex-businessman felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. After sacrificing all his fortune, a free solution appeared when he needed it most. But there was a catch. The program required the boy to be hospitalized for at least 6 months, away from any family member, to ensure the isolation necessary for the scientific study. "Does that mean he would be alone all this time?" he asked, immediately thinking about the girl's reaction. Not exactly alone. There would be a team of psychologists and therapists 24 hours a day, recreational activities, other patients of the same age. "It would be like a luxury hospital," explained the doctor. "But yes, no contact with people outside the program." When the ex-businessman told the girl the news, she reacted exactly as he imagined. "No, he's not going to be away from me for 6 months," she shouted, hugging her brother, who was awake and playing with his crayons. "We promised that we would never separate." "But it's his only chance to be completely cured," the man tried to explain. "After those 6 months, he will never need treatment again. He will be able to have a normal life. What if I never see him again? What if they forget about me there? What if he forgets about me?" asked the girl, tears streaming down her face. The boy, now 5 years old and significantly stronger due to the treatment, took his sister's hand. "I'll never forget you," he said in his still fragile voice. "And you can draw birds for me every day, so when I come back, you can show me all of them." For 2 weeks, they discussed the decision. The ex-businessman explained that he no longer had the resources to continue paying for conventional treatment, that his financial situation was completely devastated. The girl, despite being only 4 years old, understood the gravity of the situation. One day, while watching her brother draw a portrait of her, the girl made a decision that surprised everyone. "He can go," she said simply, "but I want you to promise that he will come back to me." The farewell was the most painful moment that any of them had lived through. At the airport, the girl gave her brother a small drawing that she had made of him, flying like a bird. "So, you don't forget that we're free when we're together," she said, trying to be brave. The boy gave her a drawing that he had made of her as a warrior princess. "So you remember that you're the strongest person I know," he replied. With her brother away, the dynamic between the ex-businessman and the girl changed completely. He had rented a 2-bedroom apartment, using his minimal savings as a factory worker, and she officially came to live with him after the temporary custody procedures were completed. Life on the outskirts of town was drastically different from the life of luxury that the man had known. He woke up at 5 in the morning to work at the factory, returned in the late afternoon tired and dirty, cooked simple meals that he had learned through videos on the internet. The girl attended a local public school, where she initially had difficulty adapting due to the years spent on the streets. "Why do the other kids have nice toys, and I don't?" she asked one night, after a particularly difficult day at school. "Because life isn't always fair," he replied honestly. "But that doesn't mean we're less important than them. It means we have to value other things." "What other things?" "Love, friendship, courage, kindness, these things no one can buy, no matter how much money they have." Little by little, they developed a routine that connected them deeply. Every night after dinner, they sat on the small sofa in the living room and told stories to each other. She talked about her life on the streets before she met him, about how she protected her brother, about her dreams of one day having a family. He talked about his poor childhood, about his brother Michael, about how he built his company from scratch and why he had chosen to sacrifice everything for them. 3 months after the boy's departure, they received the first letter from him. It was a drawing accompanied by some words written with the help of a therapist. He was recovering well, making friends at the hospital, learning new things every day, but he missed them very much. "He drew our new house," said the girl, pointing to a drawing that showed the small apartment, but with vibrant colors and hearts spread across the walls. "He remembers what it's like here." The ex-businessman realized that the boy had drawn something that he himself had not noticed. Despite being simple, that apartment radiated human warmth in a way that his previous mansion had never radiated. It was during the 4th month that something unexpected happened. The girl's teacher called, requesting an urgent meeting. "She has an exceptional talent for math," said the teacher, showing the girl's work. "She solves problems that much older children can't. I believe she is gifted." The ex-businessman looked at the papers with surprise. The girl who had learned to survive on the streets, who had cared for a sick brother alone, also possessed exceptional intelligence. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means she needs special stimuli, a differentiated school, opportunities that go beyond what we can offer here," explained the teacher. "I know a private school that offers scholarships for children like her, but the process is long and competitive." That night, the ex-businessman spoke with the girl about the discovery. "Did you know you were special in math?" "I always knew how to count things. On the street, I counted the cars that passed, the people, the coins I got. It helped me not to be afraid," she replied. "But I didn't know that was special." "It's very special. It means you can have a bright future, study in good schools, maybe even become a scientist or engineer. Like you were a businessman." Better than me. You can use your intelligence to help other people, not just to make money. In the 5th month, they received a call that would change everything once again. The girl's brother had had such an exceptional recovery that the doctors decided to include him in an experimental art therapy program. His drawings were being studied by psychologists around the world, and there was interest from galleries in exhibiting his works. "Does that mean he can make money making art?" asked the girl, ecstatic. "It can, and it means he's found something he loves to do and is very good at," replied the ex-businessman. "Like me with math." "Exactly. You both have special gifts that can transform your lives." It was on the eve of the boy's return that the biggest revelation happened. The ex-businessman was organizing the apartment to receive him when he found an old letter among his personal documents, a letter he had kept for years without ever fully opening. It was from Michael, his deceased brother, written shortly before he passed. In it, Michael thanked him for all the care he had received and asked for one thing, that his brother be happy and use his intelligence to help other children in need. "Maybe I've spent my whole life looking for a way to fulfill Michael's last wish," he thought, looking at the simple apartment that had become a home filled with love. The next day, when the boy finally returned, completely cured, stronger, and carrying a folder full of incredible drawings, the three embraced at the airport as the family they had become. "Now there are 3 of us," the girl said, holding the hands of the 2 men she loved. "Forever," replied the ex-businessman, knowing that he had found something much more valuable than all the wealth he had lost. And there, in that noisy airport, 3 people who had lost everything discovered that they had gained what really mattered. A family united by love, gratitude, and the certainty that together they could face any challenge that the future might bring. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.